Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Training, Learning, and Development community. Thank you so much for being here today. We have another member showcase here, and it's actually a pretty special one. It's funny because I decided to look back to sort of see when the last time we talked to Vanessa was in one of these showcases, and it's actually been like 3 years, and I'm pretty sure it was during the pandemic.
Mhm.
Which is wild because I went and checked out that video because I wanted to kind of remember what we were talking about back then. And that it seems like almost a lifetime ago.
Yeah,
And especially Vanessa, like I think um that was before like I'd met you at DevLearn and
yeah.
actually seeing you face to face and all of this and just sort of watched anchor training really start to grow and become what it is today, which has been absolutely tremendous to see you sort of rocket up, and it's so impressive. And so I'm excited to talk to you today. I have a group of questions that are
Mhm.
in the chat. I mean, in the QA area that maybe we can just discuss.
Yeah.
And we'll start out with just your journey. How you found anchor training? I think it was 2011. And what was it like? I know we talked about it before, but what did you see there? Why did you think anchor training needed to exist?
Yeah. So, in all actuality, in 2011, it was just me. That was when I started freelancing.
Mhm.
And so officially on paper, government wise, the business opened in 2018, but every time I have a conversation with, anyone asking, about the business and, the legalities of it, I'm like, yeah, it was 2018. So technically the business has been open for 5 years, but in
Yeah.
all actuality, it was me, 7 years before that. I just didn't
Wow.
LLC, do all of the things because I wasn't sure. At that time, I was just trying to make a little bit of extra cash.
Mhm.
I wanted to buy a house.
Yeah.
I live in New Jersey. It is quite expensive to live here. And I wasn't making a ton of money at work. My first job, I made $35,000 a year. So I wasn't making enough that I could have, purchased a home. Um,
Right.
and so that's when I started freelancing on the side. So I'd work full time and I'd freelance. And that went on until I would say the ball really started rolling, let's say 2015, 2016-ish,
Mhm.
maybe even a little bit earlier than that.
Wow.
Because I was working with one of my, my first customer, and I built up their e-learning department. Still, I was there yesterday with them. I still do a lot of work with them, and it had grown so much. It was basically a full-time job, which was really fine when you're single, no kids.
Mhm.
But in 2016, I gave birth to Giselle, my oldest, and then 3 months later, whoops, we're pregnant again. And
Wow.
so I had my two girls a year apart, and I was actually at that customer's office because, she's become family. And, I bring her Giselle, she loves little kids, and I've got this big belly. It's the end of summer. And I looked at her and I'm like, if I went out on my own, do you think like I'd be okay? And she's like, you should have done this a while ago, but yes, you'll be fine.
Wow.
And I went back to work after maternity leave because, I could probably do this. I lasted a month. It was just, two kids so young, for all intents and purposes, it was, two under one. And
Mhm.
um, I needed to have that flexibility for my family. And so that's
Mhm.
when anchor training, was born in that sense, right? I LLC'd, I did all the things properly.
Yeah.
And I just didn't expect it was going to be anything other than me. I know the question is like, what was the problem I was trying to solve? I was trying to find flexibility for my family
Yeah.
and do what I like to do, which was learning and development. At one point I was an office manager for a home remodeling company and their sales and marketing satellite office. And it was great. But what I realized, what I was gravitating towards, like the stretch projects I would take on that would like fill the time because I got so efficient at my job, were all related to training or onboarding. And I just realized that was kind of really core to who I am.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I just, it was supposed to just be me. And then I got a request from a customer potential customer at that time, and I couldn't take them on because my plate was too full. And I looked at my husband and I was like, I'm not going to do that again. So I brought on my first sub, and about 6 months later, they did a third phase of their project. And they came back and said, we really want to work with you. Do you have time now? And so I brought in my first team, and that's where the agency was born. And that was right before the pandemic. And that's when I realized, pulling the team together and doing all of those pieces, it really made me realize how much I actually like the business side of the agency and learning and development. And I actually get for it, which I wasn't ever able to explore before.
Yeah.
The roles I was in.
Wow. That's fascinating. I don't think I've heard that just basically straight anchor training was basically born out of you becoming a mother, that you just needed that flexibility. And especially in kind of the world that we live in today, if being able to balance having a family and also being able to do the work that you want to do, sometimes you just have to make those choices and build accordingly. So that is actually really, really impressive. I love that. So you offer digital media development, e-learning videos. I know that I followed you on YouTube for years now. Just wondering, you kind of have, I actually looked and I noticed that you actually hadn't posted on YouTube for a few months. I know I don't do the TikTok thing, but I know that that's something that you're absolutely competent at and that you build. But how do you see media and technology and L&D moving currently?
Yeah. So I think that there's so much opportunity. The reason that I talk so much at conferences about, paying attention to TikTok and what can we learn from it is because that's how we're consuming everything. And if we can borrow some of those principles, they're obviously working for marketing to gain our attention. There's probably something there that we can learn from. And it's just coming at it from a way of, let's try something a little bit different. The whole idea of stopping the scroll doesn't just have to be to get your attention to buy something. Stopping the scroll could be grabbing your attention so that you can learn something. And so I think the future truly can be video, and just looking for ways to, I think for a long time, we thought of video as something that you had to do a whole production for, you had to get the actors and do the script, and it was expensive. But TikTok is teaching us it doesn't have to be that expensive, and we actually will pay attention to more authentic things. For example, like right now I've got a camera going because I know that my team can chop up some of these clips of what I'm talking about here, and they can repurpose it on TikTok or they can repurpose it on YouTube Shorts. And so there's some of those opportunities so we can get those short bites of learning to then intrigue people into the longer form content to actually sit, for example, here to sit and watch the entire showcase on your YouTube channel. So that's how I think that if we can pay attention to some of those things and think of learning with a little bit more of a marketing mindset, we talk about engaging, trying to get people into our training programs and our, to sign up for our e-learns and all of those things, but we're not thinking around like the marketing side. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And with the explosion of AI, it's also just making video even easier to create, and I think that we'll start to see more people go that route. I know for me, now in my role, I'm doing a lot of like writing SOPs and doing all those things. For me to sit and write an SOP, I'd rather do anything else, like fold laundry. But if I can just turn on a camera and walk you through the SOP, I can do that really quickly, and then we can export it in a way. I've got some tools we can export in a way so it becomes a proper SOP. So I can really see people utilizing it in that way.
Yeah, and I think what really fascinated about you when I first met you was sort of your innovative approach and the fact that you did have, such a strong presence on YouTube. So do you mind sharing, what is your current strategy now? Do you have a YouTube strategy? Are you just doing shorts, or is TikTok the primary, or what
So all honesty, I got burnt out from YouTube. There was just a lot of things that were happening in the business that when I went on was supposed to be a short break, turned into a much longer break. And I was noticing that I was losing the passion for what I was talking about because I was focusing on, is this going to grab views? Is this, what is the end result going to be? And, people sharing, is it really worth your time if it's not converting into dollars into the business and things like that? And what could you be doing with that time? And so, yeah, I got really overwhelmed with everything that was happening in the business. Personally, a lot of things were going on, and I was just like, I just need to stop. But you have very good timing. I was actually at the Kirkpatrick offices. This was about 2 weeks ago now, or last week maybe. And I texted my director of marketing, and I was like, I think she's ready to go back on camera. She's ready to do YouTube. And she was like, this is probably the best day ever, because, she'd really been missing the longer form video. And so the reason I've been able to stay so consistent on things like YouTube Shorts or TikTok is because I've been able to repurpose my long form content and into these short form clips.
Right.
Whereas it's harder to like string that, the opposite way.
Right. It is. I know. I mean, YouTube is one of the platforms that I pay attention to the most, not like really strategically, but simply just as a viewer, because, I'm somebody at, music and cooking and all of those things. I get like a ton of that information from there. And so, knowing that you had put so much time into your channel and how consistent you were, I always really admired that. But at the same time, following influencers on YouTube, you see that burnout happen, I mean, regularly, and it is a real thing because you were constantly watching your metrics and wanting to make sure that you are zeroing in on the content that is going to get the most views. And it can be super tiring. So I'm glad that you took a break, but I'm also glad that you're going to be coming back, because you have so much to offer in that world, and are still like one of the primary innovators, I think, that is producing video on YouTube and TikTok. So let's talk a little bit about your consulting work. I mean, you've been doing this for years now. Most common challenges that you see L&D teams face.
Tale as old as time. I think it's really talking about the value that we can honestly bring in a way that our stakeholders are going to understand it. What I see from the sidelines oftentimes is, and what we'll see people post on, LinkedIn and these things, we're talking one language, a little too academic maybe, and our stakeholders are speaking a different language. And we're just no one's understanding each other, right? And so the onus is really, frankly, on us to learn our customers' business. Even if we're an internal consultant, it's still on us to learn their business, their motivations. Just like we have a learner persona for our courses, we need to have a persona for the people that are our stakeholders, the stakeholder persona, so we can start to match what are their pain points. How is this, job aid rather than the, e-learning going to solve the problem that they're actually looking for? Talking about how this can save time, and this is really what your folks actually need and want. But what we'll do is we just can't, we don't spend the time working on those consulting skills. And so what I notice is I'm quite a lurker, so I'm looking around, and I'm on LinkedIn and all these places, and I see people ask questions about, especially newer into the field, the technology and the theories and this and the that. And I'm like, y'all, that's all great to know. And I hope you do know the basics of it. I really do, because I want good people in this profession. But I rarely see you asking about, where can I build my consulting skills? And I think that people think of consulting as, sales, freelancing, going on your own. But what I always learned in the different jobs that I've had is I always still had to be a consultant, even when I was an internal employee. And those skills still really are quite helpful. And so I think that's where we're really struggling, is we're not really knowing how to talk to our stakeholders in a way that is going to make sense for them.
Yeah. Is that consistent, like a common denominator when you're working with teams, just seeing that, that communication thing always?
And I'll see, frustration from people. We don't have a seat at the table. Well, you're not having the conversation to get yourself a seat at the table. You just say, I want a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So if you can talk about some of the strategic plan and some of the metrics and the KPIs that they're going after and how your
Mhm.
department can support that. Look,
Mhm.
we all know learning is not a one for one going to, there's all these other factors that will impact the KPI, but
Mhm.
learning is still very much part of that. And if you can start to have those conversations to get those KPIs and show a little bit of, you can talk their talk and walk their walk, you'll
Mhm.
earn that seat at the table. You'll
Right,
get
right.
more champions around that table.
Nice, nice. No, I see, Cindy and Lainey and Rachel are in. I'm kind of wondering if they have any feedback on that too. If you have any feedback in chat, feel free to just jump in and post it in there, because I do think that that is a huge thing, and probably not something that we talk about enough on our broadcast in TLDC. But I occasionally have these, select few that do come in and have those conversations, and they're always so poignant, because I do think that's a really, really basic thing that um, is really relevant in L&D. And
Mhm.
so moving now to today, you are now the president and owner of Kirkpatrick Partners, which
Yeah.
is such a huge deal. And I'm sure that you are probably just learning a whole lot right now. And
Yes.
and that in particular, like being able to talk to stakeholders, and your consulting skills are probably going through some transformative.
We do a lot of work in the government and military space. And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that's,
man.
I've done some work in the government space in the past, but never at this level where I'm, really trying to get in and influence, and talking about, additional partnerships and consulting opportunities. It's just a different beast.
So, Vanessa,
Totally.
I would love to hear the story. What
Yeah.
led to this? How did this when I saw your announcement on LinkedIn, I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. Yeah. So, I realized probably at some point last year that I didn't want to just be known as an instructional designer, a learning consultant. I'm more, if I really see like what's my love and where's my future, I'm more of an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
right? And with that happens to have that learning background, and that happens to be what I invest in, what I love. And I also started following Cody Sanchez on YouTube, and she talks a lot about buying businesses and investing more on Main Street type businesses like brick and mortar, or like a plumbing company and things like that. And so I was like, it's actually quite genius to buy a profitable business and just build from there. And so I was actually looking at, my husband has his master plumbing license, so I was like, oh, we'll buy a plumbing company and things like that. But I always set my eye out on learning companies or HR, employee engagement. And one night, I was on a broker site, and I saw a training evaluation firm. So it doesn't tell you who it is until you sign the NDA. I signed the NDA, sent it over, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I see it says Kirkpatrick Partners, and I freaked out. It's like, Kirkpatrick Partners for
Yeah.
sale, excuse me. And it's 11 o'clock at night, so I know my entire team is sleeping.
Mm.
So my husband wasn't going to be as excited as I was, because he didn't really know too much about Kirkpatrick, although he had just written about it in his a paper for his MBA. So I'm looking for my West Coast team, finally find someone. I'm like, I'm freaking out. This is available. So I went through the process of meeting with the owner and submitting a letter of intent. We actually met, it was right before the ATD conference. So we met, and we had a couple conversations after I submitted my letter of intent, and she accepted it. And then we went through a summer of trying to get an SBA loan, coming up with a business plan, and we closed crazy fast within 45 days. On July 31st, we closed. So I
Wow.
officially took over August 1st.
Yeah.
And it was wild. There's a lot of things happening personally at that time. My dad, unfortunately, fell and broke his hip while on vacation. So I was dealing with him in another state, having surgery, and a lot of issues there. Him coming back, and he's my lawyer, by the way, in all of this.
Mm.
him coming back and him and my husband ending up at the hospital at the same time the week before we closed.
Mhm.
And it was wild. But throughout the whole time, I was like, I'm persevering. I'm doing this. This is what I want. And I was still able to get the business to close on time. And what I love about this business, I didn't want to necessarily buy another instructional design agency, like
Mhm.
merge it into Anchored. What I wanted to do was look at the vertical and just kind of broaden our scope and look at complementary services.
Mhm.
And so that's where, I thought that Kirkpatrick would be a perfect fit. And so now, I see myself more as, that, learning investor. And I have now a holding company that owns Kirkpatrick and Anchored, and looking forward to what I could, purchase or acquire, buy a little bit of equity into in the future. But the goal really there is to have an employee engagement network of choice. So
Mhm.
where if you want to, it's kind of like when you go to the doctor and you can go within network and everyone knows each other, they know the services, so you don't have to like go through your whole spiel every single time. You could
Mhm.
do that. Or if
Mhm.
you have, a specialist that you love so much, you can use some of our services, but then go out of network for other things because you love
Mhm.
that. The thread for me, though, and the most important is I want to make sure that every single organization that I acquire or have equity in is all about employee engagement that's rooted in belonging. And so
Mhm.
if we can have that thread through, and that's part of the mission and the core values, then yeah, I'm excited for that. And so
Mhm.
what I'm excited to is that it's a new role where I'm actually going in, assessing what needs to be updated, adjusted, how can we, bring additional value to the business. And then my goal is to step out of the day-to-day CEO role and put
Mhm.
in a CEO and then move on to the next, where I can deploy my team. We can, help, bring it up and, fix it up, and then move out and move on to the next, and just provide value to the community.
Love it. No, Vanessa, and I am excited to see how both Anchored and Kirkpatrick is going to change as you work your magic on both of them. But how different is both? Like, you have your team,
Totally
your
different.
Anchored team, and then Kirkpatrick has, I know they have their
Yeah.
team, so it seems like they're almost on opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, had you had any government or military clients prior, like through Anchored? Yeah.
Yeah, not through Anchored. I haven't worked with government and military through Anchored. With
Okay.
my last full-time role, I was working with local governments in Philadelphia,
Okay.
local government agencies. So I didn't have that background.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm learning a lot,
Yeah.
like I mentioned when we were backstage, it's, there's new employees that I didn't necessarily, hire. So I've got to learn, how they work, what their preferences are, what is their zone of genius? Are they in the right seat on the bus? Are they really actually better if I put them in this role, and they'll really thrive?
Mhm.
And so that's a lot of the figuring out that I'm doing, along with what's the systems on the back end, and
Yeah.
how can we leverage things like AI and technology to take out a lot of the manual work that they're doing now,
Mm.
and automate and free up some of the team's time.
Mm.
And looking at iterating on, Kirkpatrick does mostly certification on the Kirkpatrick model. So how can we update that curriculum and do some great work? So it's actually really nice because they actually never had an instructional designer before. So my team gets to step in and support on that, and create better products, and just adjust them a little bit. And I know that they'll be great. So it's quite interesting to go from where I built all the systems, and now I'm walking in and trying to understand, am I going to completely get rid of the system?
Mm.
Or can I, is it working well enough that I, can just get around it and they'll be fine leaving it as is?
Wow, what an invaluable experience this is.
Mm.
I mean, that is really, really impressive. So, let me talk a little bit about just your experience with instructional designers and your background, just helping coach
Yeah.
IDs. Um,
Yeah. So,
you know,
uh, Yeah, so I have been doing some coaching, and I realized that I didn't want to talk necessarily so much when I was on YouTube about like the basics of instructional design. Like I equate it to me being a mom. I was not a very good newborn mom. It was not my favorite time because the kids were super needy and they needed everything done for them. I tell
Yeah.
people that all the time. I'm not a newborn mom. I am
Mhm.
a like right now the girls are 7 and 6. Well, one will be 6 next week. I'm thriving right now because they're independent enough, but they still need me. And we have really good conversation. And I'm able to kind of, they have their foundation. And now I'm helping to mold based on from the foundation, even though I
Mhm.
did give them that foundation. But yeah, I think that for me, in terms of like coaching and instructional designers, is I like to talk to those that are, looking to expand, become more consultants, and really take their foundation that they've learned and now expand on it and work in their zone of genius.
Mm.
Very big on that. And I find that we all thrive and we all do better when we can spend as much time as possible in that zone of genius. And so now if you can figure out how to make money doing that, all the better. And, work just seems to find you no matter what.
Right. No, that's a great bit of advice. And you wear so many different hats yourself. I mean,
Mhm.
talking, you have two girls, 6 and 7, as well as now you've got these two. You've got Kirkpatrick and you've got anchor training,
Mhm.
as well as anything else in your life that you want to maintain and keep in balance. Time management, like how are you managing all of that right now?
Yeah. It's hard right now, I'll be honest. Right now is a different time, but I know it's a season. And so I think that's where the perspective, I think people get really down on, burnout and like, this shouldn't be this hard or whatever, and not realizing that sometimes it is a season and sometimes you need to put your head down and it's going to be crazy. Like the kids just went back to school. Now I'm managing the making lunches in the morning
Yeah.
and the after school activities. But I know that once I can figure that out, once I'm on a schedule, we're back. And I know for me what I have to do in order to feel good. I need to try to get outside for a walk. I need to work out in some way in the morning. I need to do like my journaling and manifestation work in the morning. And I feel a little better. That's what I need. Doesn't mean that's what everybody needs. And then in terms of the day to day of the business, it's been really entrusting my team to take on certain things. And so I'm a very hands off manager.
Hmm.
I like I like things done, but I'd rather you figure it out and then we can talk about
Yeah.
it later. Again, I'm not a newborn mom where I'm trying to,
Hmm.
be in and do all the things for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
But for a while I didn't have that, right? I didn't have a team. And for me, it was just prioritizing and knowing that I'm going to really grind it out in this season of my life. And maybe
Hmm.
I'm going to work some late nights. But I know for a fact that as much as I'm working right now, when my girls are in middle school or in high school, I'm going to have a lot of time because I'll have built the systems, I'll have built the teams that I can, work a little bit less and still have the security for my family that I need
Hmm.
and be there for some of those times.
Hmm. I just want to back up. When you're talking about seasons, you're not talking about, oh, it's just the end of summer. You're talking
Yeah.
about like an actual
Yeah.
segment of time. Yeah. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I get it. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. I think work life balance is not real. And
Hmm.
I think sometimes your life has to take priority and that's where you're going to spend most of your time. And I think sometimes work is going to take priority because, like if you're an accountant, that April 15th deadline, that's your season and that's where it's going
Right.
to have to take priority and other things are going to have to take a back seat.
Hmm.
And I think that's actually where the balance comes in because you could look at your overall year and say, was it at least a little bit more balanced? And I'll be honest, some years I know I'm going to be head down grinding more on work.
Yeah.
But then other years, I'm able to focus more on family and building the home and all of those things.
Right, right. Wow, that's fascinating. I'm gonna take that one away. I think this is the whole idea of seasons, because I know for myself personally, as I build event to event, I feel like that cycle itself is a whole challenge for me. So I'm definitely gonna be considering that. Thank you. So you have your ear to the ground in L&D.
Mhm.
Any emerging trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I wasn't going to talk about AI.
Hmm.
But I think that it's like we are figuring out ways to become more efficient with our time in our day.
Hmm.
I take that with with a grain of salt and with caution. But I think that if you're not figuring out how you can utilize AI to make your day better. So like I got annoyed taking notes. I was like, I'm just going to bring in my Otter and it's going to capture, capture the transcript, and I'll summarize it and get the notes from there. And, so those little things, or using things like Zapier to make your life a little bit more automated and easier. Those are the things that are going to actually free us up to have the brain time to think and be proactive. We're so often reactive, and a lot of times it's because we're doing a lot of things manually, or things that, we just don't really have to be doing. So if you can find ways to automate, then you have that time to start thinking ahead and being proactive and having those consultative conversations. I also just think, honestly, it's gonna, I was gonna say it, video. One of the things for me is I think I'm sometimes a little bit ahead of like the new generation that's coming into the workforce because of I volunteer for my sorority. I sit on our international executive board. So I work with 18 to 22-year-olds elect. And I have a lot of conversations with them, and a lot of people talk about, Gen Z and engaging them at work. And I'm already like, have y'all looked at Gen Alpha? Because that's, they're like 15 to 18, and a lot of them might have been our workforce. But looking at how we're engaging some of these younger generations that are so used to pulling content when they need it. If they needed to know how to do something, they're going to go to YouTube and Google it. And we do that now. They just happen to grow up with it. So I think they expect it more than we maybe necessarily expect it. And the other thing I think is so interesting is how the workforce and benefits and the value of working at a company is going to change, because quite frankly, they're getting fed a lot of information about, being an entrepreneur. If you can, go out and start your own business, you'll make a lot more money. My girls' board this morning, first day, last night, I said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're like, I want to be rich. And I was like, okay, well, how about an entrepreneur? That's what their board said this morning. They want to be an entrepreneur. So that's what these generations are hearing. It's going to be interesting how we shift and change our job roles internally to help to bring some of them in and realize that they could be an intrapreneur without having to take the risk of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that on September 20th to the 22nd, I'm doing an event. It's the TLDC AI Labs, which if you go to thetldc.com, I'll have a link up there. But I'm just getting the program wrapped up. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And I do think, Vanessa, that that AI is really a kind of a formative thing with L&D, how it's going to change. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to produce the event, is because I think that it'll be a very different event in 2024. And so I'm kind of like using these as sort of time capsules to say, this is what we were talking about here. This is what we're going to be talking, and this is what we talked about in 2024. And what are we going to be talking about with AI in 2025? Because I think that products and just the whole way we do a lot of our jobs is going to change. And even just as entrepreneurs, I don't know about you, but I think that AI has saved about 20 hours a week.
Easily.
In my life, it's really amazing. And so last question, speaking of that, one of the things I really admire you is as a female entrepreneur and definitely a leader. What do you have any advice for other women that are wanting to do the same type of thing? I mean, you're talking about your daughters and suggesting that, but I do think that, like seeing you at DevLearn and seeing you run your booth and you've got your team there, I was like, that is absolutely amazing. In this sea of expo vendors that have been doing this event for 20 years, here you are just really making a statement. And I was really impressed by that. But do you have any advice for other women out there that are just looking to get out and be successful entrepreneurs in L&D?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of cliche to say this, but don't let anyone else dull your sparkle. For a long time, I let others, and I sometimes right now with Kirkpatrick, because I'm working in government and military, I'm like, oh, am I gonna am I going to dull myself? And it's not about dulling myself, but it's about showing up as who I am and just being able to shift again, so maybe some of the language that I'm using in order to
Mhm.
hit the pain points that they're hitting and help them to understand that. While you might be even slower to change than I think other organizations might be, you're still going to have to get there, right?
Yeah.
And so for female entrepreneurs, I think, just understanding that really you can still be yourself
Mhm.
um, and create the business that you want to create. There have been many times that I've turned to my team and I said, is this even working? Should I just, am I too much? Am I too pink? Am I too sparkle? Is this too much of a difference? And then I'll meet someone or I'll have a conversation with someone. They're like, I remembered y'all. Y'all stand out. You helped me feel like I could be who I was in my
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
And I think I want to see more people do those things
Yeah.
and feel comfortable within themselves and celebrate their own uniqueness.
That's awesome. Vanessa, you are just rocking it. You've just been consistent from the beginning. It's been a few years now since we met, and I'm always impressed to see that consistency and to
Thank you.
actually, just to see how you've just, achieved all of this stuff. It's so amazing, and
Thank
an
you.
inspiration, I think, to everybody in this space. So I'm hoping to continue watching you or your growth. Are you going to Las Vegas? Do you have time for
Yes.
that? You
Yes,
are?
the team and I will be at DevLearn. I will only be there the first day of the Expo. I was going to have to run to a new mastermind group that I've joined, but I will be there for a little
All
bit.
right, nice. Well, I'm haven't quite decided whether or not I'm going, but if I do, I'll definitely stop by and say hi.
Awesome.
Just amazing. All right. Well, Vanessa, thanks for having the conversation. I'm so excited to see what's next for you. And with that, I appreciate everybody jumping in that is in. Let's see, we had something in chat here. Oh, Rachel saying, I love that. I always say I approach the instructional design role as part learning consultant, part project manager, and part customer success manager. Oh, and a question. Do you have any suggestions on how or where to build our consulting skills?
Yeah, I think you need to stop paying attention to people like me that are only talk about learning and development, and go watch other people that build businesses or that work in business and consulting. So books like How to Win Friends and Influence People. Um, you know, while keeping up to date on your learning development skills is incredibly important. It needs to be balanced. So checking out people that talk more about consulting and building businesses, you'll really learn a lot about what a CEO and things like that, or a CFO is worried about. So then you can actually tailor your messaging around how learning can support them.
Interesting. Do you get a lot of, do you consume, like, is it YouTube media that you're getting this from and books and?
Yeah, YouTube and books. I've been doing a lot of Alex and Layla Hormozy, especially right now, buying the businesses and things like that. They've been great. Alex is great around marketing and lead generation and sales and that visionary part, while
Yeah.
Layla's all about the team and the operations and day to day. So I'm getting a little bit of both.
Nice, nice. And who was it? I want to say, was it Cody Sanchez that you
Cody
would?
Sanchez. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hmm.
Excellent. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Vanessa, thanks again. And
Yeah.
everybody, tomorrow we have special guest Cindy Nagel, who is in the audience right now. We finally get to talk to Cindy and discuss her background and her journey into L&D. And so with that, thanks everybody. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Vanessa.
Thanks.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.